Steve Bignell from me and Livestock Australia. Thanks for joining us again on Flow.
Thanks for having us, Ricky.
Well, the big topic that's happened on, I guess, from what we're seeing is just certainly the horrific flooding and impact not only on human lives but animal lives as well in northern New South Wales. Starting with cattle, just how has that impacted, I guess, not only what's sold in the markets but also what's happening on the processing side?
Yeah, it is terrible what's happening up in Queensland and northern New South Wales, and it's definitely the impact that has had on the supply chain has definitely flowed through to the number of cattle being slaughtered. Last week there were 79,000 head slaughtered, and that was a significant fall of nearly 15,000 head on the week before.
All right, but when it comes to, I guess, on the pricing front, I mean, it's still sort of hovering at a pretty decent level. It's not taking any plunge for any reason. It's still pretty healthy on the cattle front.
It is. So in the ECI, which looks at the price of the young cattle in Australia, interestingly, some of the yards that contribute the highest prices or the biggest proportion of cattle to that indicator, being Dalby and Casino, were impacted by the flood. So we didn't have a sale at Casino last week, and that often gets a significant premium. And Dalby was affected by the flood. So we did see a bit of a fall last week, but we've got it. It's risen this week. We're sitting at 1,114 cents, and that's on the back of the areas in Queensland around Roma that weren't affected by the floods. There's actually some restock of demand because they've had some rain.
Oh, yep. Yeah, so they've also picked up, I guess, some of the slack, if I can call it that, because of some being offline, but I guess they'll come back online reasonably soon enough.
Yeah, we do expect the supply to come back from the impact of the floods.
Yep, all right. Looking at on the sheep side of things, not as much affected because there's a lot more of that going on further south in our broadcast areas, Victoria, South Australia as well. Yeah,
the interesting piece it's actually on from sheep is goat. We've had an amazing start to the season in goats, and Victoria does a lion's share of processing there. We have doubled the slaughter of goats in Victoria this year on what it was last year, and if we look at a national level, we're sitting at an all-time record goat slaughter.
And what's driving that? Is it just more people cooking Indian food? I'm just trying to guess here what's going on there.
It's so in terms of the pace of the rebuilds, the cattle rebuild will be the slowest because there's a longer gestational period. Sheep is quite fast, but goats has the quickest rebuild period. So there was a lot of destocking going on in 2018, 2019. Then a lot of those rangeland producers in sort of Western New South Wales, SA and Vic sort of didn't muster for a period. And we really saw slaughter sort of pick up in sort of mid-spring last year, but the start to this year has been astronomical. We've got 36,000 goats being slaughtered this week. That is over 3 times what it was in 2010 and nearly double what it was last year on a week-on-week basis. And like I said, if we go and look at Victoria just alone, in Victoria, there were 17,000 goats slaughtered this year, so they're making up the lion's share of national slaughter. They're making up more than double what they were last year.
What's the major processing side there? You're talking Victoria. Is there a great bulk of it done in 1 or 2 locations?
So with Victoria, it tends to be, interestingly, not in New South Wales where a lot of the production is. They do flow to Queensland in Victoria, but it is some of those small animal sites.
All right. Now, but on the sheep front, when it comes to, I guess, pricing and volumes moving through the yards, what are we seeing there?
For the first time this year, so it's taken us 10 weeks, weekly slaughter in 2022 is above 2020 and 2021 levels. And the big driver there has been, we know that a lot of lamb slaughter, which would have been done in January and February, was affected by those COVID disruptions to processing plants, if we call it that. So we've actually seen a rise in slaughter there. And what that has done is it has pulled a lot of those heavy lambs onto the market that sort of were held off in January and February.
Oh, yes. So we've been seeing a fair bit of lambs in the paddock, fair bit of restocking going on, but the farmers are now seeing there's an opportunity to maybe hand a few over.
Yeah, so the price has fallen 3% since the start of March to 7.84 cents per kilo for heavy lambs. But over this time, throughput's gone up 11%. So there is more lambs coming onto the market to make up for that sort of January and February when processing was down. But the drop in price is no way it's far less than what we're seeing the increase in volumes.
Now, just on the meat and livestock front, what can we expect to see coming out from MLA in the next week or so?
Next sort of month, we'll have a global benchmarking profitability report. We team up with Agri Benchmark, and it looks at cattle and sheep farms from over 34 countries and looks at the profitability inputs, productivity and profitability across sheep and cattle farms across the globe. And do know that Australian sheep farms and cattle farms are sitting pretty good in those profitability benchmarks.
Yeah, it'd be good to compare notes with ABARES. I think they had something out just not that long ago, which was looking more broadly at all sectors, and it indicated a pretty decent jump in incomes for farmers. Some might be saying, I don't know about mine, but across the board, it looks like it's been a pretty good year the last couple of years.
It has been. Prices good, and supply and production are up.
All right. Well, Steve Bignell from Meat and Livestock Australia, thanks for that. Good to go, not just across the sheep and the cattle, but the goats as well. Much appreciated.
Anytime, Ricky.